Hi, my name is Bente, I'm the Norse Witch, and today we will be looking at my grimoires, which will be a little bit, if not very, embarrassing, but you all asked for it. So, without further ado, I guess let's do it. I have more than one because a lot of these are old ones that I don't use anymore. So let's just start with the first one. I don't have my first one, but the first one that I still own. And I will just walk you through the struggles that I have with grimoires and where I am right now. All right. This is the, I think, oldest grimoire that I still have. Ooh, baby, baby. This is the wrong way around. Good start. All right. So, as you can see, back then, I still tried to make things pretty. Quickly found out I'm not good at that. And that is where my struggles all began. Okay. Back then, I tried my hands at using calligraphy and calligraphy pens and stuff. I still think it's cool, I'm just not very talented at it. So you can also see probably that the first page is already missing. So the first grimoires that I had, the first books that I used were already bound books. And I do like that. I like these, but I always have this perfectionism paralysis. I don't know what I should start out with writing in my grimoires. So I end up just getting paralyzed and not writing anything in it because I'm like, I don't know if I will change my mind and then maybe I will want to put something else in here and not this. So I used to get very paralyzed. I also had the problem that I kind of thought I had to write a beginner 101 witchcraft book in my grimoire. So I always tried to put like the basics, you know, all of these theoretical things in my grimoires. So that is why I usually started with like the elements right here and like, all right, fire, water, earth, air, ether. I even still worked with the fifth element, which I don't even consider an element anymore. I wrote something about what magic is. Planets, even though back then I didn't even work with the planets. That was also still my time where I was like, oh, I have to make everything according to the books. So planets were always in the 101 books, so I included the planets even if I didn't work with them. And I think that is where this grimoire already ends because of probably 2-3 things. First of all, the problem that I had a pre-bound book, so I didn't really know where to put which topics. Second of all, because I thought I had to create a Witchcraft 101 book in my grimoire, which it is not the case. If you have a grimoire, a book of shadows, a black book, whatever you want to call it, you don't have to put every single theoretical thing in here. Like, you don't need a page that explains to you how magic works, you know? This is not about writing a book, this is about writing stuff that's important to you personally. And lastly, I tried to make it pretty. I tried to work with a calligraphy pen. This was extremely annoying and yeah, it just kept me from actually writing in it because I was such a perfectionist that I just ended up not doing anything in this and I completely abandoned it. And this will be a theme that you will see a lot in my grimoires. So let us continue to the next one. With this one, I went a step back. I tried to abandon a little bit of the perfectionism and I was like, okay, you know what? I will just get a very cheap notebook, who cares? So I got a very cheap notebook. So, I mean, that was a good first step. The problem was though, that I still tried to turn this into a Witchcraft 101 book. So again, I started with like theoretical stuff. What is energy? Again, the elements, starting with the elements was like a very common theme for my grimoires. Always the elements. Still had ether in my grimoire. And then I already abandoned it, turned it into a sketchbook at some point and into just a notebook. So at least I reused this notebook, but you can see how quickly I used to abandon my grimoires. I would be, and that was always a common struggle, I used to get very motivated 2 or 3 days in a row, and I would write stuff in my grimoires. I would get a new book. I would be like, oh, this time I will make it very beautiful and it will be so cool and I will write everything down. And then I would write 6-7 pages in 2 days, and then I would lose the motivation, and then this happens. I would just abandon it altogether. And like, I don't know if I have ADHD or what it is, but that was always a struggle, and it is still a struggle. I always have to find the motivation to work on things like this and to just not abandon them. So this one, I maybe used this for a maximum of 1 week, and then I abandoned it again. And I moved on to this one. I think with this one I was slightly more successful. Let me see if I'm correct. I still really like this book just in general, because this is just a wrapper and you can actually slide different notebooks in and out. So that was pretty cool, because I was like, okay, if I'm done with this, I can reuse the wrapper and just slide different notebooks in there. So that was pretty cool. I wanted to make it pretty again, so I drew things, which I still think is cool. I definitely do not have the energy for that anymore. I actually had an index in here so that I know how to find things. So you can see that I wrote actually like nearly 60 pages in this grimoire. I'm actually very proud of myself. I even forgot that I had this much stuff in my grimoire. So that was cool. And I used to just keep these things in here. Nobody really sees it, so that's cool. By the way, no, I never really had like a first page or a blessing or anything, because I just could never really come up with anything. So I just left the first page blank usually. And I also abandoned, for the most part, the desire to make this pretty. So I just wrote in it. And that's it. Nothing really fancy in here. I just wrote in it. And I think that is the reason why I put so much more stuff into it, because I just wrote in it. I just used a ballpoint pen and that's it. And I just wrote in it. So that was good. So that didn't keep me from it. But the thing is, I also tried to basically write a Witchcraft 101 book. I tried to start with the basics and then work myself up there. So I also got stressed about the order in which I put stuff in here. And I'm wondering, oh yeah, because the thing is, I did actually want to make it a little bit pretty, but I decided, okay, you know what? To make it less daunting, I will just draw on random paper and then just glue the stuff in here. The thing is, I never did. So I drew some stuff and my plan was to glue these things on the other side of the page, because I just dislike writing on the left page of books. I hate it. Ugh, no, I can only write on the right side. So my plan was to draw stuff and glue them in on the left side of the page that I'm not using to begin with. But I never did. So now I have random drawings in here that I never glued in here. But yeah, I have the 4 elements again. It's just ugly. Like, you know, the fact why I am making this video is to show you that if you are struggling with grimoire keeping, you are not the only one. And if you have an ugly grimoire that's just a notebook and you just write in it and that's it, that is totally fine. You're not the only one. And this is how it goes on. Like, I actually, let me see the last page. Oh, it's actually like half full. Crazy. I mean, I ended up using this much of the book. So that's actually quite a lot for me. But yeah, at some point I was over it. I didn't really write anything in it that I really used. Like some things, alright, but you can clearly see that. And when I was keeping this grimoire, I was fresh in my new coven that was pretty Wicca heavy. So a lot of the stuff that I wrote in this grimoire was just Wicca stuff, you know. Oh, I even still apparently worked with the chakras, which I definitely don't anymore. Like, this is old. I can't even show you everything. I mean, it also doesn't really make sense because it's German, so most of you won't even really know what I'm showing you here. But there's chakra stuff, different meditations that I learned in the grimoire. My personal color associations with this is nice. I should put this into my new grimoire. That was good. But yeah, a lot of stuff that I actually don't use anymore. And I ended up abandoning this again. I don't really remember why I abandoned this. Probably because I was not really writing in this grimoire what I ended up really using a lot. And also because it is kind of ugly, you have to admit. Like, this is not beautiful. Usually when you watch a Grimoire tour, you will see beautiful, elaborate pages, very artsy, very beautiful. But this is just a notebook. Like, nothing more than just a notebook. No art, no nothing, just writing. And that's okay, but apparently I was over that pretty quickly too, and I moved on to yet another grimoire. And that one looks actually pretty different to what I was using back then, because this one is a heckin' chonker. Look at this motherfucker. This, I still think it's so cool. It's so big you can't even really see it. It's wood. It's a binder. So I tried to tackle one thing that I had a problem always with is pre-bound books, because I was always like, oh no, I have to have it all in the right direction and the right order, blah blah. So I wanted a binder, and I found these wooden binders and actually burned all of this design myself. So you can see I attempted a pretty grimoire. And now I have to see how I can show you. I'll probably just take out the pages because this is so chunky. All right, let me just show you like this. So you can see, I tried to make it prettier. And I actually made it prettier, but as you will see, I didn't keep with it for long. And I also still try to have everything in the right direction. So these are states of consciousness. Still states of consciousness. I mean, it's pretty, don't get me wrong. I like it. I like the way it looks. It was a nice artsy relief, you know, very pretty. I think this was some kind of meditation. What magic is and what energy is. I mean, you know, this was definitely the prettiest grimoire I had ever made. Drew a lot of stuff, and I used these watercolor pages that I tea stained. Really liked that too, because it made it look kind of vintage. Again, the elements. I mean, it's pretty. I have to admit that it is indeed pretty, but not practical. And then I tried a different style with just putting like some stains on it and then working with different cutouts and things like that. Pretty, but it took me ages to make just one page. This is about grounding. Very pretty. I just remember taking ages to write anything down. and making it pretty. It's just, I don't have enough endurance to do things like these anymore. These were the Hermetic laws. Also something, I mean, I still like them, I still believe in them and stuff, but they are not so important to me that I would put them in my grimoire, you know, because in my grimoire I now want things that while I'm casting a spell, I need some information, I look into my grimoire. Not like these more philosophical things, I don't know. I wouldn't put them in my grimoire anymore, but back then I still tried. And I think this was the newest page about Bramble. So this one is nice. Actually, I don't know, I really like it, it's pretty. I also like that I used runes for the headings and stuff. But yeah, as you can see, those were all the pages that I wrote in this grimoire. So I tried to make it pretty. I was successful in making it pretty. But was I successful in making a grimoire that I'm actually using? No. So let me show you the one that I'm using right now. Let's go to the current one that I actually also only started this year or something. I actually don't remember. I think this year, last year, something like that, but pretty recent. So, first of all, it's fucking pretty. So friggin' pretty. I really like it. It has a troll cross as the closure, which I think is so smart. And once again, don't laugh at me. This is a pre-bound book. Please don't laugh at me. This is a pre-bound book, but I got rid of quite a lot of the anxiety about it, because now I will slap in this book whatever I feel like in the moment, and to basically get rid of the correct order and finding things problem, I just tabbed them, you know. I created some tabs. I will probably add more in the future. Added some tabs for, like, actually just realized I have some in English and some in German. That's also a struggle I always had. I started with English, switched to German, and now sometimes I'm just stuck in my English in my brain, and then I will accidentally write a page in English, but it's okay. But I have one tab now for spells, one for divination, one for incense blends, one for oils, one for like spell basics, you know, like associations, elements, planets, things like that. And one for specifically trolldom stuff, because I kind of want to keep things a little bit separate. You know, I will mix things up, but I will always write, or I just want to always know which one is the trolldom stuff in my grimoire and which one is the more modern stuff. So I tab them, as you can see. And this far, this actually works pretty great. I can actually find stuff. And as you can see, like, this is probably the biggest difference to my older grimoires. I just started right off with a spell. And yes, this is not, like, no, this is not pretty. Again, I'm just writing in it because the ones where I'm simply just writing in it without bothering making it pretty, those are the grimoires I actually keep for a longer time. And that is what I want it to be. I want it to be something where I put my knowledge and not an art project. So I just started off right away with a spell because that was something that I was doing at that moment when I started the grimoire. So I thought, why not? And started right off with another spell. Why not? A little healing poppet. Added the, I think, 2 rune throws, like the types of rune casting that I use most often. Not pretty, definitely not, but it's practical. It's something that I actually use. And another one. So this is actually something that I can look back to when I use it. Some incense blends. I will add many, many more because I have like a million incense blend recipes now because of my shop. Oil recipes. Like, those will be a big part of my grimoire at some point. Even more incense blends. What is this? Oh yeah, I wrote a little bit about how magical power can be achieved in trolldom. And here you can see I started in English with the heading and then realized, oh, oops, I started in English and wrote the page in German. That is something that happens. And this is actually like, I just recently had a spurt of motivation to write in my grimoire. So this is actually something I wrote yesterday. Wrote a little bit about how to write spells, like incantations and stuff, and what to keep in mind with them. Actually started researching Leodahaut and Galdralach. Those are spell meters, and these are used a lot for magical spells and chants and things like that. And I really wanted to get into that, so I actually researched that yesterday, learned how to do it, and added it to my grimoire, because this is practical information that I will need in the future when I write a spell. And then I wrote a lot of stuff down about magical timing that I actually use. So the moon phases, the seasons, the days of the week, planetary, and then more Nordic stuff. So like the days of the week and how they relate to the gods and goddesses, the days of the week and which mean what in thralldom, special holy days in thralldom, the moon phases according to thralldom, things like that. You know, I try to keep it semi-separate so that I know what is what. And I actually added the Tycho Brahe days. That's a funny thing. And what do we have here? Oh yeah, of course, also the zodiac signs, because those are something that I use heavily, even though it's not a thing in thralldom. But I like to do it because it makes sense to me, so I use them. And that is it for now, because as I said, I always have to wait until the motivation hits. And the motivation hits usually, let me say, my cat is crazy having zoomies. The motivation usually hits like once every 3 months or something, and then I will have a little spurt and put stuff in here. And then I will not write anything in there for like the next 3 to 6 months. But what I'm doing in the meantime is something like this. Very pretty. I mean, these are pretty old ones. I always used to just use like ring binders and stuff, so this is pretty old stuff. I don't really do that anymore because I can't be bothered with all of these loose pages, so I just use little notebooks. And this is nearly full, so it's not like I'm not writing stuff down. I just put it in notebooks until I have time to basically collect all of the information on one topic and then transfer it to my grimoire. So this is what I do in the meantime, just have little random notebooks of information. And if I need the information before I transformed it or transferred it into my grimoire, I will look into my notebooks. This works for now. So in the end, why did I make this video? In fact, this was quite embarrassing, because usually grimoire tours are like these elaborate, beautiful, pretty, artsy grimoires, and mine are either beautiful and artsy but only have like 5 pages, or they are pretty ugly but at least have some more pages. But you can definitely see how quick I am to just abandon projects. I'm very guilty of that when it comes to grimoires. So why did I make this video? I wanted to make this video for quite some time, but actually didn't really dare to because it is quite embarrassing. But I thought, I am hearing constantly from people that people are struggling with keeping a grimoire. They don't really know how to make one that works for them, you know, they can't really work with pre-bound books, they can't really work with making it pretty, etc. Or they struggle with perfectionism and stuff. So this video was basically just to show you that you're not the only one who struggles with that. It is very common and you can find a way that works for you. It doesn't have to be pretty. If you can't work with pretty, or if you get like perfectionism paralysis, whenever you try to make it pretty, then just abandon that and don't try to make it pretty. Just make a notebook that contains your information or your recipes or whatever you really need. You also don't have to put theoretical stuff into your grimoire. If you can keep that in your mind, you don't necessarily have to write it down. If you want your grimoire to be more of a recipe book, then turn it into a recipe book. If you want to use a pre-bound book because you think binders are ugly, me too, but you struggle with ordering stuff, maybe use tabs, because then you find stuff pretty easily. For me at least, this far this has worked great. There is a way to do it that works for you, you just have to find it. This far it seems like I have found my way that works for me, but it has taken me 8 years or something to find a way that works. And for the longest time I didn't really even start a grimoire because I was so afraid that it would be ugly, because I only saw these very elaborate pretty grimoires online. And I like them, don't get me wrong, but I'm just not a person who has the constant time to make pretty pages for a grimoire. Like when I want to write something down, I want to write it down so that I can find it later on, and not because it's an art project. I would much rather have an ugly grimoire that I actually keep stuff in, instead of trying to remember everything, which I know doesn't work because my memory is shit. So I would much rather have an ugly grimoire that actually contains stuff than an art project that doesn't contain anything. And if you want to have a pretty one and you can't really keep up with it, then maybe just do both, like make one ugly one where you actually keep the information and then make a pretty one by the side and just use it as an art project, but not as a grimoire. The possibility exists. So yeah, in the end, I hope this video was in some way helpful for you. It was not intended to be like very inspiring, because I know my grimoire is not inspiring. It's ugly as fuck, but it works. So I just hope that in case any one of you feels bad about their grimoire or their black book, or however the hell you want to call it, you don't have to. There are a lot of people struggling with it. But with that being said, patron shout out. Thank you so much to Roran, Tanya, Jaina, Spider, Crow, Tegan, Margot, Catherine, Roberto, Crimson Plant Nurse, Ellie, Petra, Lunafika, Jen, Maria, Katie, Amber, Saber, Pam, Mia, Victoria, Pat, Lindsay, The Other Saffron, Silent Selena, Richard, Jazz, Christiana, Sylvia, Katrina, V, Amanda, Derek, Kirsten, Andrew, Tisha, Sarah, Asisa, Shelby, Helena, SJ, and Kate, Z, Kent, Brittany, Smolkata, Josh, Elinora, Knarr, Rixie Business, Ashley, Tim, John, Phoenix, Jenny, Amy, Bethany, Timothy, Coffee, or the Honorary Gossip Squirrel, and last but not least, Bjorn, and my lovely YouTube members. Thank you so much to Runa, Peony Rain, Jen, Pat, Lindsay, Betsy, Miller, and KT. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to subscribe and give a thumbs up and ring the bell down below so you're notified whenever I upload a new video. Feel free to check out my other socials and definitely my shop for ethically and sustainably sourced witchy wares. And if you want to support me in any other way, then feel free to check out my Patreon and my YouTube membership. And I will see you in another video. Bye!